Secretary Rubio, if that is true and we are not at war with Venezuela, will you advise the president to rescind his invocation of the Wartime Alien Enemies Act?
Well, that was a mechanism to remove people from our country that prevent grave danger. So, for example, we know for a fact that Tren de Aragua was a very dangerous gang. In fact, I believe, if I'm not mistaken, I may have been the first member of Congress.
This is a wartime act, Mr. Secretary.
Well,
are we currently at war with Venezuela?
No, we're not in a state of war in Venezuela.
Okay, the Supreme Court has described the Alien Enemies Act as a wartime power, our Supreme Court. And before now, the Alien Enemies Act was only invoked during the War of 1812, World War I, World War II, when it was used to intern thousands of innocent civilians. Are you really arguing that the president should be able to wield an internment law?
No, but we're talking about two separate things here. So you're talking about the state of Venezuela or are describing the regime.
And we're talking about,
but what the president designated.
Invoked the Alien Enemies Act.
I know, Senator, but let me be clear with you. No, but what the president was talking about are these gangs and these narco-trafficking groups that are waging war on the United States. There's no doubt. These groups have waged war on the United States. They have waged, for example, Tren de Aragua is not just a criminal gang presence in our street. It is a criminal gang directly responsible for narco-trafficking.
The Trump administration has acknowledged that the vast majority of the men it rounded up and deported to torture under this law had no criminal records whatsoever.
We didn't torture anybody.
Over 75%.
Who did we torture? We haven't tortured anybody.
So I would ask you, if a foreign country bombed our air defense missiles, captured and removed our president, and blockaded our country, would that be considered an act of war?
Well, I think your question is about and I will acknowledge you've been very consistent on all these points the entire career. So let me, no matter who's in charge. So I will point to two things. The first is it's hard for us to conceive that an operation that lasted about 4.5 hours and was a law enforcement operation to capture someone we don't recognize as a head of state, indicted in the United States, wanted with a $50 million bounty.
My question would be, if it only took 4 hours to take our president, it's very short, nobody dies on the other side, nobody dies on our side, it's perfect. Would it be an act of war?
We just don't believe that this operation comes anywhere close to the constitutional definition of war.
But would it be an act of war if someone did it to us? Nobody dies, few casualties, they're in and out. Boom, it's a perfect military operation. Would that be an act of war? Of course it would be an act of war. I'm probably the most anti-war person in the Senate, and I would vote to declare war if someone invaded our country and took our president. So I think we need to at least acknowledge this is a one-way argument. One-way arguments that don't rebound, that you can't apply to yourselves, that cannot be universally applicable are bad arguments.
Americans support law enforcement and secure borders, but they do not support a federal agency that routinely operates above the law. They do not support Americans getting killed on their streets and in their neighborhoods. What ICE is doing is state-sanctioned thuggery. It must stop. Republicans must work with Democrats to find legislative solutions to restore order and public safety. Congress has the authority and the moral obligation to act. What's missing is Republican will to act. Let me be clear. Democrats stand ready today to pass the 5 bipartisan bills in the Senate. But the DHS bill needs serious work, and Republicans and Democrats alike owe it to the American people to get it right. It's now on Leader Thune to separate out the DHS bill, just as Speaker Johnson did in the House, and start working with Democrats to rein in ICE, imposing oversight, accountability, and empowering local law enforcement in our communities. Our communities deserve it. The American people deserve it. Senator Murray.
But right now, the Democrats have raised an objection with the DHS funding bill. Now, the ironic thing about that, obviously, is that the DHS funding bill actually, if enacted, would spend less on ICE and some of the other things the Democrats are concerned about than would a continuing resolution, which would be a bill to fund the government for the full year at current spending levels. So it spends less on ICE. It also has important reforms that Democrats have requested, including body cameras, about $20 million in there for that, a couple $1 million in there for de-escalation training, things the Democrats have said that they wanted. And, of course, the DHS bill not only funds ICE and Border Patrol, but it also funds FEMA and TSA and the Coast Guard and CISA, which deals with cybersecurity for the country. So a lot of pretty important stuff. So those are all things that are included in the DHS funding bill, as negotiated by Democrats and Republicans, both House and Senate, and voted and passed by the House last week with 341 votes in the House. Almost 80% of the House of Representatives voted for the package that we have available to vote on here in the Senate this week. That being said, the Democrats have objected. And so we're anxious to hear what their demands are, what their requests are, what their asks are. I think the administration is willing to sit down with them and have a discussion, perhaps a negotiation about how do we move forward. But the one thing I do know, and that is that a government shutdown is not in anybody's interest. And
after talking with my caucus, Senate Democrats are united on a set of common sense and necessary policy goals that we need to rein in ICE and end the violence. Our caucus is unified over three main legislative objectives. First, we want to end roving patrols. We need to tighten the rules governing the use of warrants and require ICE's coordination with state and local law enforcement. Second, we want to enforce accountability. There needs to be a uniform code of conduct and accountability. Federal agents should be held to the same use of force policies that apply to state and local law enforcement and be held accountable when they violate these rules, including we need independent investigations to help enforce accountability. Third, we want masks off, body cameras on. Federal agents must be prohibited from wearing masks. They must be required to use body cameras, and they also always have to carry proper identification. No more anonymous agents, no more secret operatives. These are common sense reforms, ones that Americans know and expect from law enforcement. If Republicans refuse to support them, they are choosing chaos over order, plain and simple. They are choosing to protect ICE from accountability over American lives.
Democrats are once again threatening to shut down the government, and Democrats are once again prioritizing illegal immigrants over American safety and American citizens. Remember, the Democrats are the party that want to defund the police, and now they want to defund our nation's security. You shut down the government heading into this weekend, that means no money for FEMA at a time when half of the country is under the impact of this terrible storm, and another storm is coming. Shutting down the government also impacts TSA, air traffic control, all of those things. The Democrats will be causing chaos all across America. There are 6 appropriation bills in the Senate ready to be passed. The Democrats have had full input into all of them, and they have all passed the House. Overwhelming bipartisan numbers. Republicans are committed to working with the Democrats to keep the government open.
On this vote, the yeas are 45, the nays are 55. 3/5 of the Senate duly chosen and sworn not having voted in the affirmative. The motion is not agreed to.
Mr. President.
Majority Leader is
Mr.
recognized.
President, I enter a motion to reconsider.
The motion is entered.
To try and explain where we are here is that Senator Collins has done an extraordinary job with her hand on the rudder of getting 5 appropriations bills that are ready to go to the President's desk. We have an agreement that was between the President and the Democrats before us. The Homeland Security bill has had to be severed for a variety of reasons, and I'll get to that too. And we're trying to address that through a continuing resolution. We're trying to decide if that's 2 weeks, 4 weeks, or 6 weeks. That continuing resolution, incidentally, because of the way we fund the government here, would actually provide more money during the CR than we have in the underlying appropriation that we hope to pass someday. But, Mr. President, the reason why we're not moving forward today doesn't have anything to do with the Democrats. It has to do with a handful of Republicans who are refusing to let us move forward.